You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and this is a conversation between myself and a fellow who goes by the name of Andrew McMahon. Andrew McMahon is touring Australia. Well, he's got two shows at the very least. The first of which is on Wednesday, the 19th of September in Sydney. The second one's the next day, Thursday the 20th, in Melbourne. Let's hear what he has to say. Here we go.
I'm doing double duty right now. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, cool. Well, the tour, mate, you're coming down here in September and you've only got the two shows, so let's talk about that first, if that's okay. I mean, I know these things are out of your control for the most part, but was there an opportunity to play more than just Sydney and Melbourne? Because I'm in Queensland, I'm in Brisbane, and I'm sure we would have, there's certainly, you've got fans up here, so was there an opportunity to play more shows, or is it just that scheduling permits only the two shows in Australia?
Well, so honestly, the impetus to this entire tour is that one of my close friends is getting married in Lorne, and we wanted to make it happen so that I could get out there and play some shows and go to the wedding, and then hopefully be in a position to set ourselves up to come back after the release of the new record and get to do a proper tour with the band where we go and play more shows than just the Sydney and Melbourne.
Yeah, okay, gotcha, yeah. And the type of show that you're bringing down, okay, so I can certainly read the poster here that talks about you're going to be playing your solo material, favourites from Jack's Mannequin and something corporate. So it sounds like it's an all-encompassing career retrospective type of a show that you're going to be putting on.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, especially with the acoustic sets, and also, I mean, if you consider that I don't get to make it out there that often, I like to make sure that when I do play a show that fans of all the projects get a little bit of something, from at least most of the records or the different chapters of my career. So that tends to be how I approach the acoustic shows. Plus, they're just kind of fun to. When it gets that stripped down and there isn't the necessity to rehearse an entire band, it makes it a little bit more of a free form thing where you can kind of travel between different moments in the career and get to enjoy a little bit of everything.
Yeah, cool. What do you find gets the best response from the audience? Is it some of the previous bands, the music from some of the previous bands that you've been in through something corporate and Jack's Mannequin, or is it the solo work that you find people are turning up more nowadays to listen to?
It's interesting. I mean, I can answer that question based on the U.S. response probably more accurately than I could in Australia, which is kind of one of the reasons it's exciting to get back out there and do a show like this. But yeah, when we're in the States, I think you get a pretty huge reaction from this newer round of material. But of course, like when I dip into the bigger tunes from Jackson, something corporate like Dark Blue, and I Woke Up in a Car, you'll definitely see sort of a galvanized portion of the bass that locks in with those as their favorites.
Yeah. Okay. What's your evolution as an artist? Okay, so we've talked about the two previous outfits that you've been associated with, but do you think it was inevitable that you were always going to stand on your own 2 feet, stand within your own truth, so to speak, and be a solo performer?
Well, I think for me, at least in the case of Jack's Mannequin, that was largely a solo effort. So there wasn't really much of a difference, I think, from switching gears into this, other than I think the place that that creating was
Yep.
taking in my life, and sort of the goal to mark that period of time. The same way with something corporate, Jack's Mannequin. Both of those, I think, were really representative of a certain moment in my life, and of course, Jack's was steeped in a lot of drama with my having gotten sick in that during that project, and using, I think, the two records that followed Everything in Transit album as a bit of, I hate to say like art therapy, but it was certainly in those albums that I processed kind of making my way out of that cancer experience. And with this Wilderness project, I think my goal was really to say, I'm in a new moment. This is a new, hopefully healthier spot in my life where I can begin to explore my creativity in new ways and work with, some amazing producers and songwriters who I'd never worked with before. Now that it'll be coming up on 3, I'm mixing the newest record as we speak. So getting into this third installation in this project, I think there's been sort of a growing confidence through this period of my career where it's like, okay, you can step out in front of your own name. You don't have to be, afraid or hide behind a moniker, and you can make some of your best work that way. And certainly as I get into this record where, I finally kind of settled down in one spot and back kind of home by the beach, in the beach town where I grew up, and built myself a little studio space where I wrote songs for this new record in such a sort of like free and sort of faded way where it's like all of a sudden, you're a dad. It's like I'm now juggling that aspect of life, and I think a lot of people would assume that might be confining, and instead now where I'm at, it's like I feel like my creativity is sort of is at its peak because I'm working out of the house and I'm back to just sitting at that piano and writing every day, even if it is in between drop-offs and pickups for my daughter from school. I think that's really, whether the goal is like this constant changing of names or evolution of projects, really my goal is just to be the best songwriter I can be, and also write where I'm at and write stories that move me, and try and do that so often that I don't lose that thread, like disappear on tour and kind of have to start all over again, but just instead kind of be writing constantly.
I hope you don't mind me asking this question. Okay, so when you were diagnosed with your illness and you subsequently came through that, so congratulations on beating it, by the way. Did you find that
Thank you very much.
The muse that connects you to your creative source, if you like, did that shift?
Well, I think it just became much more complex. I think when I got out of sort of the scariest part of my disease and kind of entered into survivorship, I really had to relearn how to process the world through music, and to be honest, that was not an easy process. I don't know if it was so much that the muse had changed, but I think there was now this sort of burden of history that was really challenging to cope with. And I think in my personal life, the difficulty of coping with that also filtered into my creative life, where I think a lot of the confidence that experience took from me made writing harder. It made finishing records more difficult. The last two Jack's Mannequin records, there was 3 years between both of those records because it really took writing so much material before I felt confident in showing it to the world. And that was kind of part of why I moved on from that project. So I was like, okay, you need to figure out how to get to that place where you're feeling confident and you don't feel so guarded about showing the world what you're making in the privacy of the studio or your space, and that to me is really where this project has kind of landed, has been this renaissance of craft and like relearning my craft and training myself back to just listen to your stream of conscious. Don't be afraid to just let it flow, and don't be afraid to finish a song. It doesn't have to come out. Just sit down and write every day. And but it took me years. Honestly, it took me years to build myself back to a place where I could do that as freely as I did before I was sick.
Yeah, I can imagine. And thanks for answering it with so much insight and detail. I'll ask you this now, mate. I host a podcast series, so I'd love to release this as a podcast episode, and I'm sure people would love to hear that response.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I like being on the record with this stuff because there are a lot of young survivors out there that feel pretty alienated by that experience because there isn't a lot of support out there for young people who've gone through cancer. So I try my best to use my platform as a way to, you know, to give a voice to those people, so that they know that it's not just them experiencing those feelings, because it really is a tricky moment for, you know, for a young person to go through.
Yeah. All right, I'll make this my last question, and I always like to ask a bit of a left field question, and I try to find the most unique thing that I can about an artist.
Sure.
Okay, so I was reading that you got a friendship with Tommy Lee who used to be in Motley Crue, so tell us about your friendship with Tommy.
Well, Tommy and I spent, you know, pretty decent amount of time together in the, you know, probably around 2005, 2006. He was a fan of the second, I guess it was the last Something Corporate record, an album called North, particularly of a song that I wrote on that record called Me and the Moon. And he reached out to me while I was working on the first Jack's Mannequin record and said, I really love this song, Me and the Moon. I'm working on, you know, an album of collaborations with different artists, and I'd love to bring you in. And we just hit it off. You know, Tommy is, as you can imagine, he's got this big kid energy, but he's so passionate about music, and he's, you know, really inspiring and fun to be around, as one might imagine. And so we wrote a few songs together for his album, and sort of, you know, consequently, he ended up, you know, basically being the drummer for the first Jack's Mannequin record.
Yep.
And as I got sick, he was really, you know, he was a really sweet presence in my life as I was getting back on my feet, and, you know, came out and played a show with us, and eventually he narrated the Dear Jack documentary, which is the, you know, basically the home movies that I released, kind of following my cancer experience, and Tommy went on to narrate it. So I don't see him as much these days, but we run into each other. The last few years we've run into each other at Coachella, and it's always this very brotherly hug and hang that we have when we do see each other. Yeah, well, he was such a powerful and positive force in my life when I was kind of coming up, and you know, I'll always have a whole lot of love for that dude.
Sweet. All right, mate, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for the interview, and congratulations on your outstanding career, and good luck with the shows in Australia.
Thanks so much. Hopefully we'll get to play one for you when we come back around the second time.
Absolutely, mate. No worries. Thanks very much again.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
All right, later.
You have been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and that was a conversation between myself and Andrew McMahon. Thank you so much for listening.